Let the Lord be the judge of whether or not that prayer is a James 4 selfish motive prayer. Like let him pull that out of you and tell you that that's a selfish motivation.
This is the Prayer Culture Podcast.
Yeah, that's good. I know for a lot of people listening, this is really helpful because it's honestly a whole different philosophy of prayer. It's not even just like a system. It's a different way of thinking about prayer. And it's what I know about you and your story says it is that all of this, all of the thought and the intention, the planning, I know you said I'm not a disciplined person, but it takes discipline to do things that you don't feel like naturally doing, but out of your desire that the Lord's put in your heart, you're going to do it. And if you don't create a plan for that, that's what I appreciate about your prayer life is that it challenges me to think it is not unspiritual to be practical about the things you care about, to give yourself some practical tools so that you can overcome, like, I'm forgetful, I'm busy, I tend to just focus on whatever's right in front of me, so these kinds of things. And if I go, okay, I know myself, the Lord's given me some self-awareness, I know myself, what am I going to do with that? Well, if I create a plan and give myself some tools and focus on times and people and things like that, I'm actually doing really spiritual work that matters to the Lord.
Yeah.
That's not becoming less spiritual about prayer. It's actually very spiritual. That's what I appreciate about your prayer life.
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, and the Bible affirms that because there's a spiritual gift of administration, which is like, what? That doesn't seem spiritual.
Yeah, sure.
So having an organized life, like it, from what you said, like it seems like that's really encouraged you in the spirit. And
Yeah, it actually has done that. And so I'll give a still example. Often the afternoon prayer time, I might be with people. And so I just steal away. You look in the Gospel of Luke, Jesus just gets away, sneaks away and prays. And so I might disappear from the office. I've been at the mall with the family and gone, hey, and my kids are like, I know, I know you're going to go pray, Dad.
You're going to go pray in American Eagle.
Yeah. Yeah. Usually the food court, if I've done that.
Wait, is this American Eagle?
This is, the jeans are American Eagle.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm
a prophet, so.
Yeah, so that's it, man. So I do that. A funny example, because I have no problem. There's one perfect prayer, and it's Jesus. So I have no problem realizing I get distracted during prayer. I might fall asleep. In the mornings, I doze off during the prayer time, and I feel guilty and move on because I forget how many times I've done it. Like, I don't have some perfect thing. And actually, this is Paul Miller's structure put to Microsoft To Do. Like, it's just I don't use note cards. But because I'm on my computer, I might text somebody while I'm praying for them. Is there anything else that you need or anything else going on?
Yeah.
But the other thing that it does is if I'm praying for, I pray for the elders at Harvest just about every day. And if I'm doing that, I'm praying for those names, I might go, man, I need to follow up with that person. This happened on Friday. It'll show my age and maybe people will stop listening right now. But Friday night last week, after 4.5 hours in a dental chair, I am sitting at the Dave Matthews concert because I had been asked to go, and I said, okay. And it's me, my brother, and my cousin and his brother. So we all kind of grew up together. And so we're sitting there, now we're old men. We all have families of 2, 3, 4, or 5 or whatever. All our kids are.
So is Dave
home.
Matthews.
Yeah. And so we're all old and feeling old and sitting on the berm because we don't stand for nothing.
Right.
And I was sitting by my brother and I was on the left and I said, hey, Dale, I'm going to pray right now. So don't talk to me until I talk to you again. And so I just sat there. He's like, okay. I mean, that's the thing. It's not that big of a deal. I'm going to pray. I'm going to take 20 minutes to pray. And I set the timer on my phone and I just run through the list and I'm praying for the elders. And I thought, and you've had Tim Lorman on this podcast. And I just thought, praying through these guys, I went, I need to see Tim. I just need to see Tim. So while I'm praying, I stop and I text Tim and I go, hey, I'd like to see you. I said, no agenda. I have nothing I want to say. I've just been praying, and I just feel like we need to get together. And I haven't seen you in that context in a while. So we got together this past Monday and just talk life and where we are and what he's thinking about and things I need to be praying for him. I did stop and pray for him before the meeting ended. But in that structure, I just let the fact that if something comes to mind, my general thought, I learned this in seminary, was if something good comes to mind for you to do for somebody, it's probably not from you.
Yeah.
And so when I just go, I should see Tim. Well, I'm just going to follow up with Tim and see if we can get together. Yeah. And Monday morning we got together.
Yeah.
And so it creates many more opportunities for me to interact with people about things that are significant. Another funny example, our elder team and a couple of our staff went to Nashville in February of this year. And we're doing a disciples pathway, discipleship structure meeting, retreat, whatever, with other churches. Now, my buddy Vic is overseeing this. He works for a ministry called Replicate. And Replicate just focuses on helping churches make disciples and what their structures are for that. I pray for Vic weekly. Tuesday morning, I pray for my Baton Rouge friends. And so, or Tuesday afternoon now. So I pray for Vic often. Not always weekly, but usually on there. And it's like Chris and Maria. And I'm like, well, so when I'm back, and I haven't seen these people in 6+ years, it's like I've seen them all the time.
Yeah.
Because I'm praying for them. Right? I'm praying for Vic. I'm interacting with Vic. I'm praying for Chris. I don't talk to Chris on the phone maybe once every 4 years. I might text him twice a year, but I feel like I've been with him.
Yeah.
Because I'm continuing to pray for him. I'm praying for Allison, his wife. I'm praying for his family. I'm praying for his church plant in Indiana. Like, it matters, and it actually makes you a better pastor, a better friend.
Oh yeah,
more interested in what's going on in people's lives because you care about them enough to keep thinking about them and praying for them.
Yeah.
And if I didn't have lists, I'd be done. I'd be like, oh yeah, hey, hell yeah, you did say you had that thing that you cared about. Yeah. How was the cancer?
Yeah.
Like,
it's
the
true.
cancer?
It's true. Oh man,
it was bad.
I
didn't like it. Where were you?
I know. Not praying. I bring it all up. It's large and small requests I will bring up. And so it helps me.
Yeah.
It's imperfect. Every system's imperfect. Again, one perfect prayer. And so I don't mind the distraction, but it helps me be more engaged with people.
Sure.
To have structure to it.
And I think that's probably God honoring a commitment you've made, where you're saying, okay, my appointment with God is literally more important than anything else I'm doing today. Now, you don't go off somewhere else. Like if it's like, okay, I have to fit in my schedule somewhere, great. But you're saying, okay, it is this time, it's happening.
Yeah, it's usually around 3, but sometimes I forget it. Sundays are actually hard days to pray through a psalm at noon or whatever. So, but I'll say, like, if I know somebody's coming to the office soon, there's a way I'll go. So our building is on Kirkendall. If you live in Spring, you know where it is. But I walk out the back door and there's a gully, right? A little drainage ditch. And I walk over to Northside Christian Church, which has the Baller disc golf course.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And just great grounds. And so I'll start praying once I leave my back door, leave the back door of the office, and I'll go to Northside. And I'll just walk around and I'll pray there, and then I'll come back because I know that somebody's going to come to the office and they're going to want to step in and talk to me, and I'm going to hit pause and I will enter into a conversation with them. But if I can make the time, steal away the time, like that's a good example from Jesus. Is not always early in the morning. You know, I had a professor at seminary who goes, "That's great. Jesus got up in the morning. I'll meet him later. Jesus and I will get together later. Maybe not at 4." But with the way our kids' schedule is, during the school year, it's often 5 or 5:15 in the morning for that first run because they get up at 6, they start getting their day done. And so it has gotten earlier. I was the guy that made fun of everybody who got up before 6, or really before like 9.
Yeah.
And now I am that guy. But it came in seasons.
Right.
And so this is where we are. If prayer is the value, you got to make the time for it.
Yeah.
And in my 30s, now into my 40s, I have to make the time differently. But I do. I just go, hey, I need to do this.
Yeah.
And you just tell somebody. Like if somebody says to me, a brother or sister says to me, hey, I need to get away and go pray. I'm gonna be like, what are you talking about? We're having lunch. Like,
Right.
how ridiculous of a believer to prohibit somebody from fulfilling or pursuing a conviction.
Right.
Oh yes, okay. Well, we'll all just stay over here. Oh yeah, you're so holy. Like, no, go get away and go pray.
Yeah.
Right.
And one of our elders said at a recent meeting, he goes, "Hey guys, at this time in this month, I'm going to fast for a week. I want anybody, you don't have to do it, but I'm going to invite you in to join me with it." And I was like, "I'm on vacation, ain't going to happen. But if anybody wants to join, I'm doing this. I have this conviction about prayer and I'm going to pursue it. If you want to join me in it, join me in it.
Right.
And if not, don't. Like, and so it really is just normalized talking about prayer and finding time to pray. It's been really good.
Yeah. That's helpful.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that people expect it in your life. Like they've now expected it. Okay, Hans, your kids are like, oh, this is going to happen.
Yeah.
That's an amazing example for them because you're showing them this is where my priority level is. And I'm not forcing you to do it my way, but you can see me do it. And they're a lot more likely to repeat that pattern.
The other cool thing is my kids think that I'm praying a lot of times when I'm not because I'm on my computer. And so they go, oh, you must be praying. I'm like, oh, no, I'm just watching YouTube. Like,
right.
Yeah, but yes, hold on. Let me pull the list up. Yeah. But in the morning, it's funny. Ethan, my oldest, he'll sometimes come in. He likes to come into our room after he's done his morning things and go back to bed a second time. He likes to get a nap before he goes to school.
Yeah.
He gets up before everybody, goes to bed, or goes and brushes his teeth and comes into bed. And he'll be talking to me sometimes. And he's like, oh, sorry, I didn't know you were praying. Because he'll see the look of what it looks like on my computer, and sorry, I'll talk to you when you're done. And so it's just a part of our family's life. It's a way that we operate, and my kids don't do it. Courtney doesn't. I helped Courtney with it, but she doesn't use it in the same way, and I don't have any expectation. But if I keep talking to a brother or sister who keeps struggling to pray, I go, well, why don't you try something different?
Yeah.
Right? Like, and I have no problem. I taught our whole, anybody who wanted to can come to our equipping hour, and I taught our whole church how I do this. So you don't have to do it. God is not going to make you do it. I don't have any expectation that you would do it. But if you feel like you have an anemic prayer life, let me tell you what changed me and what has really helped me.
It's amazing.
That's great.
So going to our next question, I just want to say in this area, I was encouraged by you. I was at like a church conference thing we had at Genesis.
The parenting, I think it was the parenting night. Yeah.
Yeah. And something you said really stood out to me about my own prayer life for my kids was like, make a detailed list for your kids. So I always had these very general prayers for my kids and for my family that were just like, okay, hit a couple of highlights, same thing for all of them, whatever.
Yeah.
And
I had that too.
You were highlighting like, okay, but they have distinct personalities and distinct things that God wants to do them. So like pray specific things and have like, several things that you pray for each child that's different. Or even some of the same things. But the point is like, have a list that's detailed. And so after that, I was like, oh man. And so I'm like, I've written a list and it's like, I don't know, it's probably like 20 things right now a piece, but like you add them. And then over time, usually it hasn't even taken that long on some of these. It's like, oh, this is happening. I see this thing happening right now in my child's life because I was more detailed. I was praying for this thing and I only see it happening because I wrote it down. So talk about like answered prayers.
Yeah. So first on that, I do want people to pray specifically. I think sometimes we think, if you're okay if I address this, I think people are afraid to pray specifically, and specifically as in like, well, what do you want to have happen? Like just pray for the outcome you want. Lord, I pray that this. I still pray for things that you might just go are super worldly, like in the sense of like I pray that my mortgage gets paid off fast. Like that's not some fancy thing. But then when COVID hit and everyone's dropping interest rates, I refinanced, shaved 3 years off of it by refinancing down. Like that doesn't feel like an answer to prayer because you're like, oh, well, that's just what you do. But no, that's 3 years faster.
Yeah.
And I still pray that some of these financial burdens, like I pray for that. I pray for my kids not getting diabetes because my wife's diabetic, type 1. And so I want her to be the last one in our tree to be diabetic. And so I just keep praying that would never be a part of our story, that would not be a part that continues, and that in my kids and just it's done, stops. The Lord cut it off. And so I think those specific things are really good because then you know if the Lord answered it or not, right? God, what do we say? God has 3 answers to prayer: yes, no, or wait. Like that's it. You don't have some, well, maybe. Like God's not deceptive. He's not. He doesn't lead you on. And so I pray specifically, and then what I'll say to people is let the Lord be the judge of whether or not that prayer is a James 4 selfish motive prayer. Like let him pull that out of you and tell you that that's a selfish motivation. There's no better place to discern that than with him. And so pray specifically, pray regularly, pray about all kinds of things because you will learn over time as you keep bringing it up. Yeah, this one's about me. This
Have you had that personally? Like where it's like,
I probably have in these lists. Like I'll make notes down at the bottom in the notes section of times where I went, no, I don't need to be praying for that. Like I don't need that one. I don't need that one's not rooted in truth. And I'll just kind of go, yeah, that one needs to be done. And so again, it's just to constantly bring it before the Lord. Like, do I trust God to stir in me by His Spirit what I need to cut off that list? If I don't, why am I bringing it up? And so I pray for all kinds of things. I prayed when Courtney drove to Baton Rouge this week. She was asleep when I left the house, and I grabbed her, prayed for her. I prayed for that the car would work, that the tires would not deflate, like just things like that. Where I want God to get certain things done.
Did you anoint every tire?
I did not anoint a tire. I did not. No tire with oil, nothing like that. But
others didn't come all and lay hands on the car.
Yeah.
But I want people to pray specifically because I tell you, man, this for me. There is nothing cooler than seeing God answer a specific prayer.
Yeah.
Like it's really nothing cooler when you go, oh my gosh.
He did it.
I have had that conversation with my kids. I can't remember which one this was, but we were praying for clarity on something or that something would happen. It might have been, don't hold me to this, Lord, but it might have been my kids were playing middle school basketball at their little classical school, and classical school basketball ain't great. I just want to go ahead and say that at the beginning. But my kids love it, and they're part of a team, and it's fun. But because the classes are so small, you often have to combine like 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders to make one team. You just don't have that many. And if you have an 8th grader on your team, you're an 8th grade team. And so like the 10-year-old's not playing ever. And so I said, hey man, let's pray that it doesn't seem like there's going to be 2 teams, but let's just pray there'll be 2 teams. And then there were 2 teams. And my kids are like, God did it. And so you get to create these little moments of like, I have one of those with my kids now. One of my kids enjoys baseball, enjoys playing. We always pray about what team to be on, the commitment that makes on a family, the toll that can put on us, the financial burden that can be. And so I just told my boy, I said, just start praying for it now. Pray that God leads us as a family to a good solution for that, for fall ball. Like I want to bring everything. So you said, I believe your question was, repeat it. Why is it important?
No, my question was.
Oh, have you ever
clear
answers?
Have you seen clear
I jumped ahead to your final question. Sorry. Answers to prayer. So yes, I pray for lots of things. I wrote some of these down. So I'll give you some personal and I'll give you some corporate. On the personal front, our first few years in spring were not enjoyable. This had nothing to do with Pat. This had nothing to do with anything but it was an adjustment. We'd never made that. My kids grew up in Baton Rouge. We had a great church family. We had great friends, great ministry relationships. And we came, even though I grew up in Tomball, I haven't been here in a long time. 17 years of my adult life were outside of the Tomball area. And so my life was in Louisiana. It wasn't here. And so coming as an insider-outsider was a little hard.
Yeah.
And it was hard on my kids. It was hard on Courtney. It was hard on me. It was an adjustment, a really big adjustment, more so than we thought it was going to be. And so we were praying for a schooling solution. At that time, we were at this school at the front of the subdivision. Enjoyed our teachers, enjoyed that. Courtney worked there 1 year, had a very hard time. It was the COVID year, 2019 into 2020. And she worked part-time at that school. It was miserable. I mean, she was coming home often upset, crying, not enjoying it. My youngest is very quiet. He's kind of a follower and just doesn't like a lot of noise. Also a little OCD, and so he likes his order, does things in a certain way, and had a hard time in the noise. And so we started praying for a different schooling space for them, and specifically the school they're in now. And we had a prayer about how it was going to work out. I said, Lord, I really need it to work out this way because we can't do this, this, and this. And so I prayed on my list, like, hey, Lord, if you could make this happen and happen like this. And the like this was pretty, like this in a way that Courtney doesn't feel the burden of having to work for that, for that to happen. Now, she works at the school now, which is another answer to prayer, but that we just needed that transition. a spot where the kids could feel stable, a spot where Courtney could feel comfortable, and maybe relieve after that year of work. And she didn't work up until then. So for the bulk of the kids, she was just raising the kids, and putting up with me. And it was interesting. God answered that specific prayer. Kids were in that school. Courtney didn't have to work. The funds needed to accomplish it existed. And it was 2020 to 2021 was a transformative year for my family. And it was all because we're going, God, do this thing. So that was maybe a specific one. And again, I pray for lots. I pray for lots of things. So that was one that always comes to mind. I think on the corporate front, or maybe in the friendship front, I've been praying for a long while that a buddy of mine would go to counseling. And that's not something you can really force somebody to do unless you're a court. So
right.
We talked about it, but I started to bring it to God. Lord, I pray for this relationship. I pray that he'd find somebody that he feels safe talking to and can just do that, because I think that I just saw that would benefit him.
Mm-hmm.
And by God's grace, I don't know how long I've been praying that. Sometimes I write the date I begin praying for a prayer on the list. I didn't have a date on this one, but it's going to start that this summer.
Come on.
And it's cool. Again, that was that's one of those things where you're in the shady back room with the Lord. It feels like going, hey, God, let's get this thing to happen.
Yeah.
Hey, let's just watch and wait. And so it's just, I really do mean it's fun. It's fun to bring things to God, and that you go, God, what about this? Right? Well, could we do that? Could that thing happen? Could you change that heart? And maybe the biggest season of answers to prayer, because I think on the personal front, we're kind of in a not a lot of answers time right now, which it seems like it moves.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the biggest ones was this merger and replant. So true story, Patrick, you and you came back from the mission field, and we were at Cisco's and having lunch, and we were talking about your transition, my transition, and I asked you, do you want Genesis back? I don't know if you remember that, but I remember, yeah. Do you want Genesis back? And I was like, do you regret going? Do you regret the transition? Bro, I'll give it to you. I'll move on. Because that's just where my heart was. I don't want you to feel weird being back.
Mm-hmm.
If I can go somewhere, I'll go somewhere. I'll find another job. We'll make it work.
I knew you meant it.
Yeah. And you called me later and you said, hey, not only that same day though, not only that, but I'm happy with where it is. I know it's in good hands. So I was processing though in that COVID year, that's when you came back, 2020 was, Lord, do you have another church for us to partner with? I started praying that October 7th of 2020. And so I just started that prayer, and it might have been a daily, a weekly, but just a constant, all right, God. And then a couple of months later, I started praying for maybe there's a partnership we could have. Maybe we could partner in some way. I put question marks on my things. I'm like, I'm not sure what I'm praying for here, God, but maybe there's this thing. Maybe there's that.
Yeah.
So a lot of my prayers is it this? And is it that? I texted a buddy a prayer request, my list of future ministry endeavors. I texted that to him this morning because he goes, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I said, I don't know, but here's what I'm praying for. And some of it's will I ever move to Fayetteville, Arkansas? Will it, because there's just places that God's put on my heart that I'd love, mainly for me, I kind of go, that one's probably done.
I just love hot springs.
Yeah, that's it. So I started praying in 2020 for that. As a church, we began to operate in 2022. So it looks like September 2022. I started praying for better facilities for Genesis. I don't think you need them, but we can use them. And we always had a hard time figuring out how to fund adding any space on those 2.5-ish acres of land.
Yeah,
it's just, you're going to have to build detention. You're going to have to do this. You're going to have to do that. It's going to cost you $1 million.
Right.
And the kids ministry was busting at the seams.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't have a lot of classrooms, but we might have 30 or 40 kids. That's 40% of who showed up on a Sunday. We didn't know what to do with that. And so you have 30 kids and crammed into 4 classrooms. We added a class. We're trying to make it work. So we're just going, how do we do this? And so we heard from our church. We started to talk to our community groups. And we really heard this kind of overwhelming, we don't want to be mobile. We appreciate having a space. The space works. Like it's not great. We could do better this, do better that. But like if the option is sell and start being mobile and looking around, we're not for that. And so I scatter plotted kind of where the members of our church lived just to start to see. And I went, man, if we got here, we would be closer for most and still rather comfortably within driving distance for the ones that have to go a little farther, like the Heinzes, right? Like the little farther, but when you live 3 blocks away, anything's farther. So I started praying for location near 99 in Kirkendall. That was actually the intersection that I was started to pray for. And then I just put something spectacular with 3 question marks after it. And then
something spectacular?
Yeah. Huh?
Specifically vague.
So I just started throwing like, maybe it's this. I went back in December of 2022 to merger idea again. Maybe there's something out there, God. So I removed it. I actually put it there, removed it in January 8th of 2024, because January 7th of 2024, Harvest started. Harvest meets just north of 2920 in Kirkendall. I mean, the Lord wasn't quite at 99 in Kirkendall. He did move us a little farther north, or south. I'm sorry, a little farther south. I was getting north and south in Houston, screwed up for some reason. So a little farther south, but we're okay. But that was, I call them sniper rifle prayers. There were some specific prayers that we needed to have answered in order for this to work. And if this conversation didn't result in this thing, or if this thing didn't happen in that way, it was a no. My favorite one was actually not even something I was praying. So we had started to talk to the finance team, just letting them know, hey, this is an opportunity.
Can you explain real quick what Harvest is, though? Because
I'm sorry. Yeah, Harvest is you would call it a merger. We're actually doing it as a replant. In that, it's a new organization, new EIN, new bank account, new structures, new governance, it's new everything. And so what we did is the church at Creeksend, which was meeting at 2920 and Kirkendall, and Genesis came together.
Which is incredibly close to where you were praying specifically.
It really is. Yeah. Like it really is.
Yeah.
It's a mile from that spot.
Yeah.
And so I drove by this place all the time. We joked about, I thought it was going to be Northside. But we said, well, maybe God geolocated my prayer once I started praying it, as I was driving south, and it was right at that spot. So we started talking a year ago about our youth ministry started to work together at Creeksend, and we started to work through, could this happen? Like, could there be a merger between us? And we actually decided it would be best to make it a replant, because we wanted to say to both congregations, this is a new thing. X church isn't absorbing Y church isn't absorbing X church. Harvest is going to absorb both. And we're going to set it up a little differently. We're going to have different governance, probably different affiliation, different ways we operate. But it was like I started listing, got to do this, got to do that, got to do this, got to do that. Building has to sell by this. Like all kinds of things that needed to happen. And we were assessing elders at that time. And so we're assessing guys, and we're going, hey, like we brought them into the process before the merger conversation began. And then like in August, we're like, hey, BT Dubs, this may happen and you got to be comfortable with it.
Yeah.
And so what do you need to do? So thank you for letting me clarify that. So I meet with our finance team to tell them, and they met it affirmatively. They liked the idea. And I was walking out and I was talking to our members, Patrick, another Patrick, not you, and said, hey, I'm going to meet with Tim. This is Tim Lorman, who is one of the Harvest elders, but also if you know Tim, he's very serious about the Lord, very serious about not doing something against the Lord, very serious about leadership and leadership integrity
and prayer,
and very serious about prayer.
Yeah.
And so, Tim is an intimidating person to meet with because he's serious about the Lord. He's intentional with his questions. He's just like, but he's also thoroughly loving.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew I had a meeting with the 2 candidates we had, Tim and Zach. I'm guessing, I don't remember when this was, October, September, or whatever. I'll look at my calendar. But I have the finance team meeting. We lay it out, and I said to Patrick as I was leaving, hey, I meet with Tim tomorrow. Zach was already comfortable with it. I said, I meet with Tim tomorrow. And my prayer throughout this whole thing was that God would move hearts, that we don't have to convince, right? Like, because when you convince somebody, it's like, oh, well, Hans just laid out the scenario and it sounded way better. Like, that feels like a job proposal. I didn't want to do that. So here's what we should do. So I said to Tim, or I said to Patrick, I'm going to meet. Please pray that Tim is receptive. He goes, I'm going to do more than that. I'm going to pray. Now, hopefully Patrick actually prayed this, but he said it. He goes, I'm going to pray that you are surprised by Tim's response. And I was like, okay. And so we get to Barbarossa the next day around lunchtime. I'm sitting with Zach. Tim walks in. He goes, let me tell you what the Lord did. I mean, seriously, like, sits down. He's like, I was praying this morning, and this overwhelming peace came over me, and I trust my leaders. And if this is the right thing, then the Lord will make it right. He did say, hey, I'd like to see this aspect change, which that aspect did change too. Be like, I'd like to see this. I would feel better if this existed. We don't have that right now, but I'm at peace, and I trust my leaders. And
were you surprised?
I was surprised.
Yeah.
Because I did. I just said, hey, I'm not going to try and convince you that this is a good thing. You tell me what you would like me to talk to you about, and I will talk to you about it. And he goes, let me tell you what happened while I was praying this morning. So that was a pretty cool one.
Yeah.
I think another one on that was we needed the Genesis building to sell so that we could have some of the capital to do some of the work we wanted to do, including the refinance of the building we're in. And we brought it before our church. We do the same thing we did at Genesis, like prayer lists. Hey, church, pray for this month, pray for this summer. So we brought that the building would sell in February. And like we put it in the market in January, and we didn't think anything was going to sell. And it was extra humorous to me because February was a leap year, and we got under contract in February on the 29th. Like we actually
just slid.
Yeah, right there with the every 4 years any other year would have been March 1st, but like we got under contract, had our church, we put it before them at the beginning of the month. We'd like to see a swift sale of the Genesis property, and we got it done. Like the Lord did it, and it was to the people we wanted to have buy it that we were not sure were going to buy it because they said move on. But we wanted people there who love the Lord, that we know, that we partner with, they're a different gospel expression. And so it's just so cool to see that.
It's good.
Love it. It's amazing.
So use lists, kids.
Use lists.
It's the lists that did it.
I'm being seriously convicted right now.
Michael's having his own moment.
It's real. So really just last question here, Hans. In terms of the importance of this for the body of Christ, being organized and in your prayer life and being able to see those answers and stuff, like what level of importance do you think this is?
I think having a system for prayer is a 10 out of 10 important. What that system is, whatever. If you want to take a prayer walk for an hour every day before you start your day, if you want to email yourself prayer requests, if you want to text all your friends every day on the group me or whatever, what can I pray for? I don't care about the how that looks. I think having a structure, both corporately for your church and individually for a disciple that is reproducible so you can teach people how to pray better, is a 10 out of 10 in importance. This system took years for me to figure out, right? The conviction, remember, came in 2011. The implementation didn't start until 2019, right? So for 8 years, I was trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. And the Lord's gracious. He's patient. And
He heard all those prayers.
And so we work it out, and I try to figure out how to do better. And I was praying for church members with other people from my church. So it was an 8-year process to get to what I have. And what I have has been a 5-year process to get to where it is. And so be committed for the long haul, but find the structures that you use, right? The best system is the one you use, not the one someone else uses that looks cool.
Sure.
You may hate it.
Yeah.
And so if you are a very free-spirited prayer, then I would just go, okay, well, how can we add a little bit of structure to your free-spiritedness so that you don't lose things? It's important that you pray for, if you're pastoring, it's important that you pray for your whole church in some way. It's important that you pray, bring needs of the church before the Lord. So how are we going to do that if you're just free-spirited? Just going to hope that God brings it to mind when he needs to bring it to mind? Like, I would guess if you inventoried that, you would be failing at the things that should be brought to mind, because there are more needs out there than you can probably hold in your brain. So what system do you have for doing that? No, so the system important, but the what it looks like, that's gonna vary.
Sure. So like the guardrails, biblical guardrails for prayer are you need to be doing it. So if you're not doing it, you have that guardrail, and then and you need to be doing it for the people in your congregation, for the people in your life, you know. And so having guardrails of, okay, I know I need to be doing this, so I'm on this road, and I can be on this side of the road or this side of the road. That's okay. As long as I have a structure that makes sure that I'm actually doing it and not like just saying I'm doing it or desiring to do it, but I'm not.
Right. Yeah. Something that lets you hold it together based upon where you are, and it works. So that's all. And so we do have some models. Pray without ceasing, pray persistently. There are some things that God tells us to do.
Sure.
So how can I then operationalize that in a way that doesn't feel forced? And like I said, my system has grown over years. I made a big adjustment in 2022 into 2023 to adjust when I pray for things and how. And so just keep doing it, be patient, and give yourself time and energy to work it out.
Awesome.
Helpful.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Hans, thanks for coming on.
My pleasure. Really.
I feel like I need a Chick-fil-A sandwich.
What?
He said, my pleasure.
Is that a Chick-fil-A thing?
Really?
Sorry, I didn't even know that.
Are you a real person? You don't know that?
Is it written on something? I don't know. I thought it was just eat more chicken.
Just shut it down. Just say bye to everyone.
We'll see you guys next time. As a reminder, the Prayer Culture Podcast is a ministry of two or more, which is a crowd-funded ministry. So if you enjoy this content, please check out our website and giving page listed in the description. Also, when you have a second, hit the like and subscribe button.